Hi, it's Bonnie here. So I thought we'd do something a little different today. I'm actually working on a really big course right now, and thought I would try out my setup with our Sunday chat and give you something a little different to look at besides me. So today, um, I thought we would talk about fear and failure. So first thing I want you to know about fear and failure, you weren't born with it. You were not. In fact, scientists have done a lot of studies on fear in babies and small children. And I remember reading this ages and ages ago. And in fact, when you're born, you've only got two real fears. One of them being a fear of falling, I believe. And honestly, I can't remember the other one, but they certainly are not the fear of trying new things. Think about it. Think about all you try and all you work at figuring out and up and down and trying again and again and again, and how much you screw up those things between the ages of like 0 to 5, right? You learn to walk. Most of us did not just stand up one day and start walking, right? We fell on our butts, we fell over, we fell off things. We learned to talk. Let's face it, we did not come out of the womb with grammar. Like, it just didn't work, right? We learned how to manipulate things. We learned to run. We learned so many, like we learned everything. And we pretty much screwed it all up at one point. I want you to think about that for just a second. Everything we did, we've pretty much screwed up a little bit, or we're not very good at one point. So here we are, though, where most adults do have a fear of failing. So what gives, right? Because let's face it, and I'm sure you have had this experience where failure, the fear of failing, has stopped you in your tracks. And it quite often stops us from getting what we want out of life. And this whole group is all about figuring out what we want and figuring out how to get it and figuring out what stops us so we can kick it to the curb and not let it stop us anymore. And this is one of the big ones, this fear of failure. So if it's stopping us, we need to take a good hard look at it. So let's just think about it for a moment. I mean, I know I have, but have you ever been so afraid of messing up that you didn't even try? You found an excuse or procrastinated long enough or let someone else do it. Like, have you ever been afraid of doing something, like, or the result of doing something that you just didn't even bother trying it? Maybe going to school, maybe trying a new video game out. I mean, it can be anything from taking a new route to work to switching careers, right? And so many of us are unhappy where we are, but we're so afraid of screwing it up bigger or not being successful that we just don't even try it. And this is really holding us back. Look back, think back, what came up for you when I said that? What event happened where you subconsciously undermined your own desires, where you may have hit some self-sabotage? You know what I'm talking about, the excuses, procrastination, even deliberately messing other things up so that you don't have to continue or you don't have to deal with it. You know, not calling someone back, not filling out the forms on time, things like that, that can really mess it up. And now you can't, right? So you set yourself up for failure in the small degree so you don't have to fail at what you really want. It's kind of crazy, right? So I want you to really think back, because once you can look at that and you can see what you were doing to undermine your own self or to self-sabotage, depending on how you want to look at it, you can recognize when you start doing it again, because self-awareness is the key to all of it. I keep saying that, and here's another way it actually is. So take a good hard look. This is a great thing. I know you're going to laugh, but it is really a great thing for you to journal about, right? To really think, where have I stopped myself from going forward with something I really wanted? Where have I done that to myself, and how did I do it? Because that's going to be the key to a lot of stopping yourself from doing this again. So another thing we need to think about is how we define failure. It really is different for every single person on the planet, and it's different within context too. So, for example, I can walk in gladly and easily to a classroom anywhere, anytime, and I can have a great day or a decent day. And even if I mess up, I don't consider that a failure because I know how classrooms work, right? I have no problem with that. It wouldn't faze me very much at all. Standing on a stage in front of 100,000 people, trying to motivate them to increase their own self-awareness, well, that's a whole different story, right? And that's because I have a benchmark of what I think I'm good at and what I think what I can do. Now, I do think that eventually I can be that person who stands on a stage of 100,000 people and speak, because that is one of my plans, but that's a goal I have. How easy would it be for me to self-sabotage that, though, right? And what constitutes a failure depends on the person, and it depends on how they view it. So something simple like baking a cake. You bake the cake, you ice it. If it's a little dry, some people might consider that an ultimate failure. It's not perfect, it's not wonderful. Other people would be like, well, it's not bad, it's decent, carry on, right? So a lot of it just depends on how you view the failure, the experience that you're going through. And it's all about what you value. Your belief system, of course, comes into it because it influences everything that you do or don't do, right? So how are you defining failure when it comes to whatever it is that you want to do in the first place? Is failure not trying? If it's something that you really want, that's part of your life plan, I would have to say maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's up to you to define that, right? So one question that often comes up, especially in my groups, so if so many adults have a fear of failure and they weren't born with it, where does it come from? Well, I think, most of us could answer it personally for ourselves, but there's two big places where this fear of failure comes from. The first, when you're little, right? Having unsupportive or overly critical adults in your life can give you that belief that failure is a bad thing. It's true. Most of the adults who give us the gift of the fear of failure are trying their best. They really are. They believe that they're trying to keep us safe. They believe that they're trying to push us harder, to be successful, to work harder, to do more. But that's not always the case. It can show up in rebellion. It can show up in perfectionism. It can show up in procrastination. It can show up as pure fear when you're going to start something new, and it stops us. So we're often given the belief, we're given this fear. And of course, they can model it for us as well. The other place that this comes from is usually some sort of traumatic event. So some big event, maybe in grade 3 or 4, you gave a presentation and your friends laughed at a part where you weren't meaning to be funny, right? Or you didn't feel prepared and you had to do it anyway and you flubbed it. And now you create this belief that trying new things is going to be embarrassing and hard and upsetting, and you just don't want to, right? So an event can trigger this fear of failure as well as a belief system. So really that's what it comes down to. We've created a belief around failure, which is kind of what I want to talk about next. What if I told you that you aren't really afraid of failing? What you're most often afraid of is what other people think about you when you fail. How's that feeling? If that rings true for you, give me a hell yeah down in the comments, because we are not worried about trying and failing. If you really dig a little deeper, what we're more worried about is someone finding out and judging us as a person. The problem is, we think if we fail, other people are going to want to call us a failure. And that just simply is not true. You are not a failure. Everyone screws up. Everyone messes up. Everyone tries and bungles it. So here's what I want you to take away. If you take nothing else away from this little slideshow chat today, failure is an event. It is not a character trait. All right? You cannot be a failure. You can have failure. Hell, you can even create failure if you really want to, but it is not a character trait. It just is not. A failure is an experience the same as going to Starbucks and ordering a coffee, the same as stopping at a red light, the same as reading a book. It's just an experience. Hopefully, one that you can learn from so that you don't repeat the same thing again and the same mistakes and the same bungling, or at least if you do, you do it better. But I want you to take away that if you try something new and it completely bombs, it's not on you. Change your belief around failure and what failure is, and you will be more apt and more likely to jump in and start trying the new things and expanding your life and expanding your awareness so that you can also move forward into the life that you desire. Because unfortunately, if we keep doing the same things, we're going to have the same old life. And I think if you're in this group, you most likely don't want the same old life. You want something better, something different, something more fulfilling, right? And you're going to have to do something new. So please understand, yes, other people may still have that belief that failing is a personality issue, but I want you to take away from today that it is not, that you are not a failure. You can't be. How is that possible when it's not a character trait? So that is my chat for today. I hope you enjoyed this new way of doing things. Let me know what you think. And I will talk to you again next Sunday. Mwah. Bye for now.